What if I told you there was an English writer whose best-selling career began with a hole in a wall? Born in 1913, Dora Saint wrote her fiction under the pen name Miss Reed. She was most famous for her much-loved stories set in the fictional villages of Fairacre and Thrush Green, in a career which spanned 5 decades. She died in 2012, aged 98, and this summer I had the pleasure of interviewing her daughter Jill Saint in her lovely Oxfordshire garden. Together we talked about the places which inspired Dora's stories, the remarkable legacy she left behind, and how a hole in the wall started it all. Can you tell us how Miss Reed the writer was born? How did she choose the name, and did she ever imagine she'd be using it for so many years?
Well, she wrote from the end of the Second World War onwards, so she was moderately known, worked for the BBC and Woman's Hour and quite a lot of writing, so she was known. And she wrote a short, light essay, really, which came out in The Observer, called The Lucky Hole. And one of the directors of Michael Joseph saw this, liked it, and wrote to say, could she think of expanding that sort of idea into a novel, written from the point of view of a village school headmistress. And she went to see them, and, you know, to cut a long story short, they commissioned the book and said, what about, we would like to do a pseudonym, really, because they were known at that time for a lot of semi-autobiographical stuff, Monica Dickens and people like that. And so she said she had no objection. What was her maiden name, they said, and so it was a rather odd one. So she chose Reed, which was her mother's maiden name. Nobody thought of the pun till then, but the full explanation of how she became Miss Reed is rather well done, originally in the Countryman as an article, and we put it into Mrs. Griffin Sends Her Love later, Jenny and I, when we collected some of her early works together.
But what exactly was the Lucky Hole? Well, when Dora Saint was living in Chieveley in the 1950s, she was working as a supply teacher in the neighbouring village of Peasemore, and would cycle to the school along the country lanes. Entering Peasemore, she'd pass a long flint and brick wall, where there was a large socket in one of the flints at about child's eye level. In the essay The Lucky Hole, the children excitedly show their teacher the hole in the wall and tell her that local people leave little treats like sweets, nuts, or even coins inside for the next child to find. As the schoolhouse is now a private residence, I'm not sure how many children walk by the wall today, but there was a little treat to greet me when I looked inside. And of course, I left one in turn, as is the tradition. I love how this simple hole in a wall led to Dora Saint becoming a best-selling author. So Miss Reed was the name of the headmistress in the Fairacre books. Did she ever have a first name?
No, she didn't. She never did. But quite an odd little coincidence was that once a reviewer referred to Grace Reed, and that was my mother's, Dora's mother's name. Which just odd. But that otherwise, no, she really never had one, poor thing.
Because that's the question every reader wants to know, isn't it? What was Miss Reed's first name?
Yeah.
In Village Diary, the dedication reads, "To Jill, the first reader." Did you get to read all your mother's manuscripts before they went to the publisher, and did you ever dare make suggestions?
Yes, I did read them all. Yeah, not really, no, just occasionally there would be she once called some child 2 names, which I pointed out, and we chose one. She did make a few mistakes, actually. I didn't pick them up, but one of her characters was a bigamist, and had to hastily kill off the first husband in the second printing. Everybody missed that, including Jenny, who was eagle-eyed, her editor, as you know. And the other one, Miss Clare had 2 birthdays. That's right, some eagle-eyed reader noticed that, but mostly I didn't notice anything myself.
I was actually going to ask about that. How did Dora organise her plots and books? Because she had 2 long-running series. There's the Fairacre series and the Thrush Green, over a sustained period of time, and before computers. And how did she have a system for organising the plots or keeping everything in her head?
Pretty much keeping everything in her head. She did have notes, just an ordinary, a few notes scribbled down, but not a card index or a record of anybody's birthdays or when they got married or anything. As far as I know, it was in her head.
And how did she write her books? Did she have a favourite place to write or a set timetable? Was she a morning person or?
She was, really, yes. At that point, when she started, I was still at home and at school, and my father taught. So she used to get going once we'd set off in the morning, and she'd finish, tea time-ish really, when we came home. And she also tried not to do too much in the school holidays. But yes, it was really a sort of, not quite 9 to 5, but nearly.
The Miss Reed novels were illustrated by S Goodall, and the hardback covers are a real delight with their soft country colours and rural details. I feel very lucky to own a few of the original illustrations, including some from Changes at Fairacre, and they are very much loved. I adore the S Goodall illustrations, as many of the fans of the books do. Can you tell us how that collaboration came about?
That was when she was first asked by Michael Joseph to do the book, and at some point one of them said, have you any ideas for an illustrator? And she said, well, there's one chap I like the look of, or I think they were either in or advertising material for, I'm not quite sure, the Midland Bank, as it was in those days, just signed JSG. So whoever it was, Robert Lusty, I expect, mostly dealt with her at Michael Joseph, said, oh, well, that's actually who we had in mind. So they managed to get John, who was, of course, absolutely superb. There's a nice tribute from Dora to John in Mrs. Griffin Sends Her Love. I mean, she published it elsewhere, but we thought it was so nice we put that in.
The Miss Reed books have some wonderfully comic moments, such as Miss Reed burying her excess marrows given to her by well-meaning neighbours in the middle of the night. I love it. And the vicar's molting gloves in the Fairacre books always make readers laugh. And the beloved Mrs. Pringle and Dotty Harmer. What I'd love to know is, did Dora have a good sense of humour?
Oh, yes. Yes, she did. And I think that, speaks for itself really in the books. But what I found quite interesting was I was round at the village school reading Tiggy with them, and these children were about 7 or 8, I suppose, that group, and one child said, which I thought was very perceptive, was Miss Reed funny? Which I thought was rather sweet, and I said, yes, she was actually, and without wanting to be patronising, I think you'll see that more when you're of an age to read the adult books. So she was quite happy with that. But I thought that was quite an interesting thing from a youngish child.
That's a really cute observation. I love that. It's well known that the fictional Thrush Green was based on wood green, but was there ever a real Fairacre?
No. It's an amalgam really of all the villages she knew in Berkshire, Kent, a downland southern village really, she would say. Nowhere particular.
Although Fairacre doesn't really exist, I like to imagine the village of Peasemore when I'm reading the books, as it was the inspiration for the Lucky Hole which led to the creation of the Fairacre series and that first wonderful novel, Village School, published in 1955. And the church really does look like one of S Goodall's delightful illustrations with its tower and spire. I had a little wander around, taking a look at this gorgeous downland village, enjoying the peace of the church and the cottages that surround it, and imagining Dora Saint arriving on her bicycle for a day's teaching. In the books, Miss Reed is a keen gardener. Did Dora enjoy gardening, and did she ever grow Miss Reed's dreaded marrows?
I don't remember marrows, but yes, both parents kept up the garden. They weren't hugely fanatic or knowledgeable, but they were, competently kept it going between them, yes. But no, I don't remember marrows. Maybe we did.
I love that photograph of her leaning on the gate in the garden. I think that's a beautiful one of her, and I think it's one of those scenes that we always imagine from both Miss Reed and Dora Saint, somewhere in like a beautiful garden or a gorgeous English landscape.
Yes, that was by Mark Gerson. I've only discovered that quite recently, and he has only this year died at 104, so pretty well. And while he was there, he took a photograph of the cat, Tiggy, who had a book all to herself. So I think we must be distinguished by being one of the few people to have their cat photographed by Mark Gerson.
I adore the nature walks that the children go on in the Fairacre books. Was your mother a great walker?
Yes, they weren't, setting off the whole day across North York moors or anything, but they would go out most days and wander around the village or, a few miles, yes.
The Miss Reed books are often portrayed as gentle and comforting reads, but they dealt with serious issues like rural poverty, domestic violence and education. Do you think her work got the credit it deserved?
I think people notice it more now, somehow, just judging by a few things on Facebook and odd things people have said. I think it's noticed more now, but people also do say how comforting they find them. People who've been bereaved, or very often people who have, Brits who have gone abroad. And I do think people find them very comforting. But yeah, I think that social history side, I think because probably we're that bit detached from the 50s when the first ones came out, it's now seen a bit more as social history by a lot of people.
You mentioned the book about Tiggy before. I love how Dora wrote all sorts of books, and I have a couple of copies of her cookbook, and we're big fans of the chocolate mousse. Was she passionate about food? And if so, what did she particularly enjoy baking?
She did like food, yes. She was fairly ordinary. She wasn't didn't do very elaborate things, but they liked having their friends round for a meal, and she would do all the classic things, really. She was a good baker, actually. It skipped a generation with me, but when in much later life, when she had carers, she was horrified to find that they couldn't make a sponge cake without thinking. So she would drag them out into the kitchen and make them make sponge cakes, or teach them how to make sponge cakes.
And she also wrote children's books and 2 volumes of autobiography. What do you think she was happiest writing?
What she really liked, and it's out of fashion really now, is the light essay. She was good at that. Very. But she obviously enjoyed the fiction, but again, as one can see in Mrs. Griffin, which is the earlier work, she did a lot. It was almost journalistic, really, some of it, and she did a lot of book reviews. She could turn her hand to most things, really, but obviously the Miss Reed novels took over in the end.
And the final Fairacre book was called A Peaceful Retirement. I think this was a very clear message to the readers that there wouldn't be any more books. But do you think Dora missed writing?
No, I don't think she did. I offered to type up anything. You know, she had good ideas, let me know, and I'd type it up for her. And she said, well, you know, thanks, but no, I haven't really at the moment. So I think she'd had enough by that time. I really do.
In 2013, Mrs. Griffin Sends Her Love was published. Can you tell us how that came together?
Well, I'd thought for a long time that her early work was worth publishing, but couldn't quite work out how we'd do it. But the centenary year was coming up, because she died the year before, and Jenny agreed with me, and Juliet Ewers, who's the Orion publisher, also thought it was, you know, agreed to do it. And I think we started really, Juliet came down and looked through a lot of her work and chose anything in particular that she liked. We found a lot of letters from, which way round? Yes, from Dora to Lil, her older sister, that they wrote to each other very regularly. So that was quite almost a little autobiography in a way, what they were doing each week, pretty much. And we used quite a few of those. And Jenny did all the hard work of we both chose it, and then she did the proper editing and putting it together in a sensible order, different sections really. And I think it was a success. I hope it was.
Which authors did Dora admire and enjoy reading?
She was a great Trollope fan, mainly. Barbara Pym, Jane Austen. I honestly can't think of any more, because I wasn't always there when she was, reading something. Her main thing she often used to say was that if she had written The Importance of Being Earnest, she would have died happy. That was all she wanted to have done.
Have you ever been tempted to write yourself?
Not really. I can write practical stuff, reports, descriptions of things, whatever, in decent English, I hope. But no, I can't do fiction. I can't do it all. I did write 2 pages once of of what was going to be a wonderful novel based in Oxford, but I think Libby Purvis got there first. She did it rather better than I could.
Your mother writes so well about village communities. How important was it for her to be a part of a small community? And would she have ever considered living in a town or a city?
No, she was brought up, her first, only about 7 years, I suppose, were in London, which I suppose at that age you just accept where you are, don't you, or where your parents are, or whatever. But no, she was really a countrywoman at heart, always. And I don't think she would ever have gone back willingly to live in a town.
Isn't there that lovely scene in one of the autobiographies where they arrive at the train station in the rural village and she immediately feels at home?
Yeah. I think that's a lovely bit of writing. I think it was one of her best bits of writing, actually. That, less than a page probably, but it epitomises everything she felt. I think it was very clever.
So Dora wrote many different kinds of books, but she also had a lot of different roles in life. Writer, teacher, magistrate. Which do you think suited her the best?
I think the writing, without doubt. She was good at the others, but yes, she always wanted to be a writer. She wanted from an early age to be a journalist, and my grandfather apparently thought this was very improper, and so she became a teacher. But I think she always wanted that.
We had the great joy of visiting Chieveley today. Can you tell us how long Dora lived there?
Oh, we moved there in 47 and they left in, gosh, I can't even do that, 62, if you can work that out, 15 years or so, yeah.
And what are your memories from this time?
Well, I went to the village school, which wasn't unlike Fairacre, made friends, some of whom I still have. It was a very happy time. It was very rural in those days. And those are the main things, really. I do remember her writing, but of course she wasn't Miss Reed until, well, my late teens, really. So, but she was always writing something or other.
How much of your mother do you see in the fictional character, Miss Reed?
Oh, a lot. She always said quite openly that if she hadn't married, she would be very happy with that sort of life.
Finally, what is it that you think makes Miss Reed's books so enduring?
It seems that people find them very, very comforting and escapist. That's one aspect. The Fairacre ones, as we've said, do have a certain amount of social history now. And what is rather lovely is that one Ron Perry, who is the director of a very long-established amateur dramatic group in the New Forest, has written 4 plays based on Miss Reed's books, and they have been lovely. So there's another aspect of them which has been great fun. 3 were based on Thrush Green and 1 on Fairacre, the village school. So that's been great fun to do and very interesting, and he's made a lovely job of those.
Jill, thank you so much for your time today.
It's been a pleasure.
I had such a lovely day exploring 2 of the villages that were so important to Dora Saint, and chatting to her daughter Jill in her beautiful garden. If you haven't read any of Miss Reed's books yet, I really hope this has inspired you to pick one up. You're in for a treat if you do. And don't forget that the much-loved novels that have delighted readers for decades all began with a hole in a wall. This is gorgeous.
Yes,
Oh, that's quite sticky.
got above itself. Oh God, I'm stuck.